The play opens with Reverend Paris praying by his afflicted daughter's bedside. We are led to infer from the dialogue that follows between Paris and his niece the details of the events preceding this moment. What do we come to learn has caused Betty's affliction? A. She has been bewitched. B. She is desperately frightened because her father has seen her meddling with witchcraft. Abigail has poisoned her with a brew made in the forest. 2. The dialogue between Paris and Abigail also reveals some important characteristics of the Reverend. Paris, if you traffic with spirits in the forest, I must know it now, for surely my enemies will, and they will ruin with me. Abigail, but we never conjured spirits. Paris, but then why she not move herself since midnight? The child is desperate. It must comes out. My enemies will bring it out. Let me know what you done there, Abigail. Do you understand that I have many enemies? Abigail, I have heard it, uncle. There is a faction that is sworn to drive from my pulpit. Do you understand that? I think so, sir. Paris, now then, in the midst of such disruption, my own household is discovered to be the very center of some obscene practice. Abominations are done in the forest. Abigail, it were sport, uncle. Paris, you call this sport? I cannot blink what I saw, Abigail, for my enemies will not blink it. From the dialogue above, we can infer that Reverend's primary motive for wanting to know what happened in the forest is A. His father's love for his daughter, C. To concern for his own reputation, or D. His desire for gossip, to know more about the townspeople. 3. The Putnams enter the bedroom. Miller describes Miss Putnam as a twisted soul of 45, a death-ridden woman haunted by dreams. What has happened in her life to twist her soul and haunt her dreams? A. She has lost 7 seemingly healthy babies to an inexplicable death. B. She desperately hates Goody Good, her rival in the village. Or C. She and her husband have been sued again and again by the villagers. 4. Abigail insists that the other girls remain silent about her attempts to witch John Proctor's wife. She then threatens them. Let either of you breathe a word or the edge of a word about the other things, and I will come to you in the black of some terrible night, and I will bring a pointy reckoning that will shudder you. The best paraphrase of this passage is A. If either of you reveals even the smallest detail of what I did in the forest, I will come to you while you sleep and stab you out of vengeance. B. If either of you tells what really happened in the forest, I will wait until time when you aren't expecting it, and I'll get even with you in an unexpected way. C. If either of you talks about what I did in the forest, I will point the finger at you, and you will be the one to hang. 5. Once John and Abigail are left mostly alone in the room, we see some details of their relationship unmasked. These details are revealed both through their dialogue and the stage directions. Read over the following stage directions. What do these reveal about their present feelings of both Abigail and John? Proctor, look at Abigail now, the faintest suggestion of knowing smile on his face. Proctor, his smile widening. Abigail, her concentrated desire destroys his smile. Proctor, setting her firmly out of his way. Abigail, grasping his hand before he can release her. Abigail, clutching him desperately. Proctor, gently pressing her from him with great sympathy but firmly. A. Abby still longs for John and wants to rekindle their affair. John, though fond of her and tempted by her, is determined to maintain his distance. B. Abby is angry and resentful at John for breaking off their affair. John is trying to be understanding and kind, though he no longer desires her. Or D. Abby still hopes to seduce John despite their earlier failure to do so. John is steadfastly resisting the temptation and is disgusted by her efforts. 6. The company asked Rebecca Nurse, an elderly woman renowned for her piety, to give advice about the stricken Betty. She says, I think she'll awaken in time. Pray, calm yourself. I have 11 children, and I am 26 times a grandma, and I have seen them all through their silly seasons, and when it comes on them, they will run the devil bowleg, keeping up with their mischief. I think she'll wake when she's tired of it. A child's spirit is like a child. You can never catch it by running after it. You must stand still, and for love, it will soon itself come back. Her advice can best be summarized by which of the following? A. The girls are clearly bewitched. Do not chase their spirits, or the devil will whisk them away. B. The girls are just acting like silly teenagers. Leave them alone, and they will come to their senses. Or C. The girls are acting silly. All you need to do is give them a good beating, and they will stop. 7. It is revealed that John Proctor has not been to church in some time. What does he offer as an explanation for his absence? A. He has been working outside the county in another town. B. He has been ill. Or D. He doesn't like the negative preaching of Reverend Paris. Number 8. How would you characterize John Proctor's relationship with Thomas Putnam? B. Putnam is jealous of Proctor's youth and attractiveness. C. Proctor sees Putnam as greedy and arrogant. Or D. Putnam sees Proctor as lazy and stupid. Number 9. The Crucible has a number of passages of authorial intrusion where Arthur Miller breaks into the dialogue of the play to offer readers historical commentary and character analysis of Reverend Hale. Miller writes, Mr. Hale is nearing 40, a tight-skinned, eager-eyed intellectual. This is a beloved errand for him. On being called here to ascertain witchcraft, he felt the pride of the specialist whose unique knowledge has at least been publicly called for. Coming into Salem now, Reverend Hale convinces of himself much as a young doctor on his first call. His painfully acquired armory of symptoms, catchwords, and diagnostic procedures are now to be put to use at last. The road from Beverly is unusually busy this morning, and he has passed 100 rumors that make him smile at the ignorance of the yeomanry in the most precise science. His goal is light, goodness, and its preservation, and he knows the exhaustion of blessed whose intelligence, sharpened by minute examinations of enormous tracts, is finally called upon to face what may be a bloody fight with the fiend himself. From this description, we can conclude that Hale is A. well-meaning, though a bit arrogant and naive, B. full of himself and malicious, or C. kind and with no motive but to help others. 10. If you wanted to prove that Hale is not as quick to leap to conclusions of witchcraft as many others in this play, which piece of evidence would be the strongest support to this claim? A. Hale, what victory would the devil have to win a soul already bad? It is the best that the devil wants, and who is better than the minister? B. Hale, you cannot evade me, Abigail. Did your cousin drink any of the new brew in the kettle? Or D. Hale, I must tell you all that I shall not proceed unless you are prepared to believe me if I should find no bruise of hell upon her. 11. Giles Corey, who Miller describes as crank and a nuisance, but withal a deeply innocent and brave man, reveals his innocence by underestimating the potential danger in the current situation. What question does he ask of Reverend Hale that a wiser man might have avoided? A. He asks what it means if a man finds himself unable to pray. B. He asks what it means if a man's wife reads strange books. Or D. He asks what it means if someone's children all die. 12. Facing increasing pressure to confess as her part In the witching of Betty Paris, Abigail lashes out of the easiest person she can target. On whom does she initially lay the blame for the shenanigans in the forest? B. Goody Osborne. C. Betty. D. Tituba. Act 2, 13. In Act 1, we see John Proctor and Abigail interact with one another. The scene contrasts with the opening scene of Act 2, in which John and Elizabeth interact. Which of the following best describes this contrast? A. John and Abigail's relationship is full of heat, passion, and anger, while John and Elizabeth's relationship is strained and cold. C. John and Abigail's relationship is obviously strained by their feelings of guilt, while John and Elizabeth's relationship is harmonious. Or D. John and Abigail clearly love one another, while John and Elizabeth are stuck in a loveless marriage. 14. Coming back from the court, Mary Warren is tired and emotional. She weeps and talks about the court with horror. Which of the following best explains her reactions? A. She is finally realizing the serious consequences of the girl's actions and feels compelled to justify her guilt. B. She is worried that she will be found out as a fraud and exposed. She is afraid of Abigail, knowing the one misstep could have her, Mary, accused in court as well. 15. Goody Good has escaped hanging by claiming she is pregnant, despite being nearly 60 years old. Mary assures the Proctors that the doctor has checked Goody Good and confirmed the pregnancy. We can infer from this that B. The doctor doesn't believe in the trials. C. The judges are fools. Or D. The judges are superstitious. When Reverend Hill asked John to demonstrate his piety by reciting the commandments, John forgets which one. A. Thou shalt not steal. C. Thou shalt honor thy parents. Or D. Thou shalt not commit adultery. 17. What does his forgetting this particular commandment tell us about John? A. That he feels guilt for not attending church often. B. That he is worried about the Putnams encroaching on his property. Or D. That he feels guilt for breaking his marriage vows. 18. In addition to not attending service often enough, what is the other spot of softness that Reverend Hale sees in John Proctor's church records? A. He hasn't paid his tithes or offering. B. He hasn't had his child baptized. Or C. He has committed adultery. Number 19. Both Elizabeth and Reverend Hale have asked John to go into town and testify against Abigail, telling the court that she confessed to him that there was no real witchcraft. John is hesitant. However, why? What might be his motives for not wanting to speak out? Select all that apply. A. He still feels a fondness for Abigail and doesn't want to condemn her. B. He is afraid that his affair with Abigail will be revealed. C. He is afraid of the court and the possibility that he too could be accused. Or D. He is hoping that Abby may accuse some of his enemies. For 19, you're going to pick 3 out of the 4 choices given. Number 20. If you wanted to prove that Reverend Hale is beginning to doubt the authenticity of the trials, which evidence would be the strongest to support for this claim? A. Elizabeth, Mr. Hale, I don't think you are suspecting me somewhat, are you not? Hale. Goody Proctor, I do not judge you. My duty is to add what I may to the godly wisdom of the court. B. Proctor, there are them that will swear to anything before they'll hang. Have you never thought of that? Hale, I have indeed. Or D. Proctor, damn the deputy governor out of my house. Hale. Now, Proctor, get ye gone with them. You are a broken minister. Hale. Proctor, if she is innocent, the court. Number 21. When Cheever discovers Elizabeth's poppet and quizzes Mary Warren about it, Mary claims that Abigail was sitting beside her in court while she made the doll. From this, we can infer that A. Abby saw Mary make the doll and leave the needle in the stomach and thereby came up with a plan to implicate Elizabeth. B. Mary made the doll under Abby's instructions in order to help her accuse Elizabeth. Or D. Elizabeth has used the doll to hurt Abigail and got Mary to lie for her. 22. Elizabeth lets her temper show a little in the scene, despite the bad timing and potentially dire consequences. What does she say that she might later come to haunt her? A. She says that Abigail should be ripped out of the world. B. She says that Cheever and Herrick are going to hell. Or C. She says that the court is full of frauds and beggars. 23. In one of the famous speeches of the play, John Proctor says, "If she is innocent, why do you never wonder if Paris be innocent, or Abigail? Is the accuser always holy now? Were they born this morning as clean as God's fingers? I tell you what's walking Salem. Vengeance is walking Salem. We are what we always were in Salem, but now the little crazy children are jangling the keys of the kingdom, and common vengeance writes the law." Proctor is pointing out that it is not just witches that might have cruel motives. What might accusers gain from crying witchcraft against their neighbors, according to Proctor? A. They gain attention and fame. B. They get revenge. C. They gain power. 24. We end Act 2 with the following aside from John Proctor. Now hell and heaven grapple on our backs, and all our old pretense is ripped away. It is a providence, and now great change. We are only what we always were, but naked now. A. Naked in the wind, God's icy wind will blow. Which of the following is the best paraphrase of this aside? A. We have to make a clear choice between doing good or doing evil to one another. We, the members of the community, haven't changed. We are the same people we've always been, but this trial has made us see each other's weakness more clearly. And now the weakness will be further exposed by the adversity that is coming. B. Some in the congregation are going to heaven and some to hell, and the thing we have to decide now is which people are which. We have to strip off everyone's disguises and allow the cold light of God's justice to reveal the liars. Or D. Life is not as simple as assigning actions to heaven or hell. Indeed, if we are pretending that we are all innocent and going to heaven, then we are the real sinners, and it's high time that God stripped away those disguises and revealed us for the liars that we are. Act 3. Number 25. Danforth warns Mary and John, "Before I decide whether I shall hear you or not, it is my duty to tell you this. We burn a hot fire here. It melts down all concealment." What does this statement mean in the immediate context of the court? A. That like a fire that reveals and burns away the impurities in metal, the court will reveal the lies and impurities in their evidence. B. That the fire that melts down metal, the court melts down people's resistance. Or D. That like a fire burns wood, so will all who lie to the court be burned. 26. Proctor is startled when Danforth tells him that Elizabeth is pregnant. Despite his surprise, he does not doubt her, for he claims, "If she says she is pregnant, she must be." That women will never lie later in the scene. Proctor reiterates, "In her life, sir, she never have lied. There are them that cannot sing and them that cannot weep. My life cannot lie." What is the purpose of this repetition that Elizabeth doesn't lie? A. It provides dramatic irony. The audience knows that she has already lied, but John does not. B. It creates a sense of tension. Savvy audiences know the absolute statements such as these usually signal that the opposite is going to happen. Or C. It builds the symbolism of the crucible. The fire of the court, audiences believe, will burn away all lies. Number 27. Danforth gives severely lengthy speeches defending the work of the court and arguing, in a seemingly logical fashion, that the work they do is legitimate. However, he employs a number of logical fallacies. Which of the following statements from Danforth is an example of a classical logical fallacy? A. Mr. Hale, you surely do not doubt my justice. B. You must understand, sir, that a person is either with this court or he must be counted against it. There be no road between. Or C. No corrupted man may fear this court. 28. Giles seemed to be surprisingly skilled in matters of the law. Why? A. He studied at university. C. He has read many books. Or D. He has been many times in court. 29. If you were going to argue that Giles thought a bit of a clown, it is nevertheless noble and courageous. Which of the following pieces of evidence would you cite to support his claim? A. I am never put upon, I know my rights. B. A fart on Thomas Putnam. Or C. I will not give you no name, I stand mute. 30. When Hale suggests calling lawyers to argue the case, Danforth rejects the suggestion. After all, he says, there is nothing for a lawyer to argue. The only two witnesses to witchcraft are the witch and the victim, and the witch will always lie. Therefore, we must rely on the victims. What faulty assumption underlines his logic? A. His assumption that victims do not lie. B. His assumption that there are not other witnesses to witchcraft. Or C. His assumption that witchcraft is always a bad thing. 31. After Danforth receives Mary's deposition, he says to her, has Mr. Proctor threatened you for this deposition? She says that he has not. Danforth asks her twice more, and then again at the end of the scene. What can we infer from this about Danforth? A. That he wants her confession to be a lie so the court can continue and he won't look like a fool. C. That he is very thorough, extensively testing all evidence brought before him. Or D. That he hates Proctor and wants to make a fool of him. 32. Hawthorne lays a trap for Mary by asking her to faint. When she confesses that she cannot, the stage directions tell us that he looks at her with a gleam of victory. What does this tell us about Hawthorne? A. He has an earnest desire for truth. B. He does not believe in witchcraft. Or C. He enjoys manipulating people. 33. During his confession, John Proctor repeats a number of phrases that Elizabeth had said to him earlier in the play, including this one. I lusted, and there is a promise in such sweat. What does this signal about John's character at this point in the play? A. He is a dynamic character in the process of learning and growing, coming to accept his guilt and the role he has played in this tragedy. B. He is a dynamic character who has not yet made any changes, but this signals that learning and growth are coming in the next act. Or C. He is a static character. He doesn't make any changes or growth despite the wisdom of his wife. 34. When Danforth asks Elizabeth about John and Abigail's affair, why does she lie? A. She doesn't want to get Abigail in trouble. C. She wasn't really sure whether or not they truly had an affair. Or D. She doesn't want to endanger John. 35. If you wanted to argue that Mary's capitulation, her caving in at the end of Act 3 was foreseeable, what piece of evidence would you offer from earlier in the play to support this claim? A. Mercy. Oh, you're a great one for looking, aren't you, Mary Warren? What a great peeping courage you have. B. Mary. Abby, she's going to die. It's a sin of conjure. Or D. Proctor. What work you do. It's a strange work for a Christian girl to hang old women. 36. At the end of the play, John Proctor delivers another powerful speech. A fire is burning. I hear the boot of Lucifer. I see his filthy face, and it is my face and yours, Danforth. For them that quailed to bring men out of ignorance, as I have quailed, and as you quail now, you know in all of your black hearts that this be fraud. God damns our kids especially, and will burn. He will burn together. Which of the following is the best summary of John's meaning? A. Proctor argues that Danforth's ignorance is leading Salem to hell, and that he, John Proctor, is the only one who can see the truth. C. Proctor argues that Danforth is allowing the ignorant children to control him, and that Danforth's stupidity will damn them all. Or D. Proctor believes that both he and Danforth have lacked the courage to do what they know is right, and that as a result they will go to hell. Act 4, number 37. If you want to argue that perhaps Reverend Parris is beginning to feel some guilt for his part in this tragedy, which piece of evidence would you offer? A. His confession that Abigail has fled with his money. C. His offering John a drink of cider. Or D. His contempt toward Judge Hawthorne. 38. Why has Danforth brought Elizabeth out of prison? A. He plans to execute her today. C. He wants her to convince John to confess. Or D. He wants her to watch the executions so she'll be scared. 39. Danforth accuses Elizabeth of being unfeeling, saying, "Be there no wifely tenderness within you. He will die with the sunrise. Are you stoned?" Which of the following characteristics might best explain why Elizabeth shows Danforth no emotion? A. She is proud and doesn't want to give him the satisfaction of showing emotion. B. She is genuinely unfeeling and doesn't really love her husband much. Or D. She is too trusting and doesn't really believe they will hang John. 40. Hale says to Elizabeth, "Let you not mistake your duty as I mistook my own. I came into this village like a bridegroom to his beloved, bearing gifts to high religion. They very crowns of holy law I brought, and what I touched with my bright confidence, it died. And where I turned the eye of my great faith, blood flowed. Beware, Goody Proctor. Cleave to no faith when faith brings blood." From this speech, we can conclude that Hale, A. has lost some of his faith, B. still believes in witchcraft, or D. believes the Goody Proctor is evil. 41. Which of the following statements best describes John Proctor's motives when he first tells Elizabeth that he wants to confess? A. He is afraid of dying and wants to confess and live. C. He feels like a hypocrite already and thinks confessing won't make him any worse. Or D. He is afraid of what the townsfolk will think of him if he doesn't confess. 42. We learn in the scene that Giles Corey has been executed via what means? B. He was shot. C. He was starved. Or D. He was pressed. 43. Why does Judge Danforth want Proctor to confess so badly? Other people have already confessed. Why does Danforth want a confession specifically from Proctor? A. He hates Proctor and wants to humiliate him. B. He recognizes that Proctor is respectable and has influence over others. Or C. He thinks that if Proctor confesses, Elizabeth will too. 44. When Rebecca Nurse is brought in to hear John's confession, the stage direction tells us that John turns his face to the wall and speaks through his teeth, his face turned from her. What does this stage direction tell us about how John is feeling at the moment? A. He is ashamed to be lying in front of Rebecca. B. He is angry at Rebecca for not confessing. Or C. He is hoping Rebecca won't see him. 45. How does Rebecca Nurse respond when she hears John confess? B. She is angry and condemns him to hell. C. She is worried about Elizabeth and the baby. Or D. She is sad and asks God to have mercy on John's soul. 46. John is willing to confess, but what is he not willing to do? B. Vow to go to church regularly. C. Sign a written confession. Or D. Leave Salem. 47. Danforth says, "Is that document a lie? If it is a lie, I will not accept it. I will not deal in lies, mister." Why is this claim an example of verbal irony? A. Because Danforth is himself a big liar. B. Because neither John nor Elizabeth ever lie. Or D. Because Danforth has been dealing in lies all along. 48. How does Elizabeth feel about John's decision to be hanged rather than confess? B. She is cold and indifferent, as unfeeling as always. C. She is proud of his courage and his goodness. Or D. She is worried that he won't go through with it. 49. When asked why Arthur Miller wrote The Crucible, part of his reply mused, "Turning to Salem was like looking into a petri dish, an embalmed stasis with its principal moving forces caught in stillness. One had to wonder what the human imagination fed on that could inspire neighbors and old friends to emerge overnight as furies secretly bent to the torture and destination of Christians. More than a political metaphor, more than a moral table, the Crucible, as it developed over more than a year, became the awesome evidence of the power of human imagination inflamed, the poetry of suggestion, and the tragedy of heroic resistance to a society possessed in the point of ruin." If you wanted to simplify Miller's analogy, which would be the best way to paraphrase it? A. Studying what happened in Salem was like observing how viruses start rapidly and lead to a furious ruin. C. Studying what happened in Salem was like observing how rumors spread as fast as viruses. Or D. Studying what happened in Salem was like observing a petri dish full of Christians. 50. When asked why Arthur Miller wrote The Crucible, part of his reply mused, "Turning to Salem was like looking into a petri dish, an embalmed stasis with its principles moving forces caught in stillness. One had to wonder what the human imagination fed on that could inspire neighbors and old friends to emerge overnight as furies secretly bent on the torture and destruction of Christians. More than a political metaphor, more than a moral table, the Crucible, as it developed over more than a year, became the awesome evidence of the power of human imagination inflamed, the poetry of suggestion, and the tragedy of heroic resistance to a society possessed to the point of ruin." Which is the best way to explain how Miller viewed the theme of the Crucible? A. Miller viewed the Crucible as a political metaphor to represent what happened to him during the Red Scare. B. Miller viewed the Crucible as a political metaphor and moral tale about the tragedy of witch hunts. Or C. Miller viewed the Crucible as evidence of what happens when a society allows itself to become paranoid to the point of ruin.